Oh, that's it. Hi, Ali. That's okay.
Hi, Mark.
If I'm being that easily replaced, then that's fine. No problem.
I think it was
No,
Linda. Anyway, yeah.
that's no big deal.
All right,
Great,
great.
great to
So we
see you. Great
can
to have you back. Wow.
get going.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Great to be
Thanks.
here.
Yeah, thanks very much for joining us on this this Monday evening. And what a great subject. Really look forward to it. So on behalf of the clinic, I want to welcome you back.
Thank you.
Your presentations are always really amazing and well received. So if people could just put some of their questions in the chat, but I think let's just focus on the presentation. And I think you want to look at maybe
Hmm.
questions at the end. Maybe we could
Yeah.
save it for that. So maybe patients could save their questions more towards the end so that we're not going back and back and back, into the chat. Be great.
Okay.
So thanks, Ali. I'm going to
But
let you.
like you both did last time, feel free to jump in if you think I've rushed over something or there's a really good question. I don't mind at all.
Sure.
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay,
Um,
great.
so someone just
Sure.
asked, for those of you who just joined, we were kind of talking shop a little bit, and there was a sleep summit at the beginning of February that some people on this call had attended. And I can just see there's a question in the chat, like, what are we talking about? So there's an organization called Doctor Talks. I don't have the exact link, but someone might find it and put it in the chat. And they run about one online summit a month. And, some of them are more relevant to, say, our audience tonight than others, but the February one was on sleep. And so that's why it came up. It was a very high quality summit. And I learned quite a bit. I sat in on several of the presentations. You can still go back and access it, but unfortunately, after the fact, you have to pay. So the model for these summits is if you sign up and watch it, there's like 6 or 7 presenters every day. And if you watch them on that day, it's for free. But if you want to watch it after the fact, you have to pay for kind of a lifetime streaming membership, basically, to
Access.
that
Yeah,
summit.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So if you
Right.
go to,
Yeah. And I did send out that link, Doctor Talks, hey?
mhm.
Okay. I'll look
Okay.
for it and pop it
So I'm
up
going to
there.
jump
Yeah.
right in.
Thank
And
you.
I was also
You go
saying,
for it. I think, yeah,
okay,
most people here have seen Dr. Stein before, I think, maybe not. We're so
okay.
happy to have her back. I won't talk too much because I know that your presentations are jam-packed, and I'm going to kind of stand back and, unless there's something that's outstanding or, relevant question, then I'll pop in. But yeah, how to get a restorative sleep. Thank you.
So what I was just saying before we started the recording is I'm in the trenches with you on this one. So here's my story. I had okay sleep until I got sick in 1989. Once I got sick with ME, my sleep was trashed and I was hypersomniac, meaning I was sleeping all the time and still wasn't feeling refreshed, probably 14, 16, 18 hours a day. Obviously, at that time, I wasn't working, I was just surviving. And then slowly over time, so, I know most of you have chronic pain, but there may be some people on the call who have chronic fatigue syndrome or myalgic encephalomyelitis. So this is a little bit more for you. What typically happens over time in ME is you start out being hypersomniac and then it switches over time to insomnia. So that's what happened to me. I followed the classic course and needed to take sleep medications to get any sleep at all. And as you're going to see in the presentation, sleep medications are far from ideal, but they're better than not sleeping, right? So everything, you have to weigh the pros and cons. And then in 19, oh my gosh, I'm aging myself. In 2017, some of you know my story, I got significantly better. And one of the things that improved at that time was my sleep. So I was able to cut way back on my sleeping pills. I was able to fall asleep without medication, which was like incredible after 27 years of not being able to do so. And I was bumping along, feeling very cocky about my sleep. And then over the last 2 years or so, it's deteriorated. So I'm having more daytime sleepiness, very different from the insomnia that goes with ME/CFS, in which you feel tired but not sleepy, right? So in ME/CFS and fibromyalgia, and maybe chronic pain, I'm not quite so familiar. You feel very tired all the time, like brain fogged, and you can't function, but you also can't sleep if you lie down and try to. So that's not my current problem. So I have a different problem, a new problem. And this is what happens as you get older. I think you start accumulating new health problems. So I decided I had to swallow my pride and go for a sleep consultation. And here in Calgary, we have a really high quality sleep clinic. It's called the Center for Sleep and Human Performance. And Dr. Charles Samuels is the kind of the head of that clinic. And I've known him for years. So I got a consult with him, and he asked me he did a very good history. I was very impressed. And at the end, he said, "So why are you here? Like, why are you asking for help?" And I said, "Well, I'm wondering if you think a sleep study would help figure out what's going on." And of course, sleep studies are really expensive. So I'm kind of hoping he'll say, "Oh, no, you don't need that." And he just laughed and he said, "Ellie, really, you should have had one 20 years ago." And I'm like, "Oh my goodness." So I go for the sleep study, and it's very, very bad. I won't go into my personal health details, but it was pretty shocking. And that was just in December. So in the last few months, I myself have been really doubling down on all of the strategies I'm talking to you about today. And I just want to acknowledge that even if you do everything right, sometimes it's not enough. And I'm in that situation right now where I'm still struggling. So I just want to be transparent. When it comes to sleep, I'm not proposing that I have all the answers, but the things I'm going to share with you tonight are some of the things that have helped me and have helped the thousands of patients that I've worked with over the years. So they're worth trying. So what we're going to cover is why we don't get enough sleep. So implicit in that is we don't get enough sleep, most people. What are the health consequences of that? And that's not really to scare you. It's more to motivate you to say, oh, this really is important. And if there are things you can do to improve your sleep, it's worth doing because it's going to help you in so many ways. Then, of course, the biggest part of the presentation is what are some of the strategies to try. And then I've just got a little thing at the end on jet lag, in case some of you have questions around that. So I've talked before about Professor Matthew Walker. He's kind of the sleep guru. And he says that sleep is the greatest life support system you could ever work for. It's a remarkable health insurance policy. And the bonus is that it's free. So in my teaching in general, I'm always attracted to the things that are accessible to everyone, right? There's some really cool stuff out there, which costs a ton of money. And there's some really cool new stuff coming out in the sleep field that I learned about at the Sleep Summit. But it's not going to be accessible to most people because it's probably going to be pretty high priced. So these presentations that I'm doing for NELMs, I'm really focusing on the things that everyone or almost everyone can probably try. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to go back to basics. I realized when I talked about circadian rhythm in January, I didn't maybe talk about some of this basic sleep information. So some of you may know this. It'll be a review, so just bear with me. When we sleep, we start up here at the top, awake. We fall into stage 1, which is usually pretty short. It's a brief transition of a few minutes between awake and light sleep. Light sleep is stage 2. Apparently, because I actually looked this up because I didn't know the stats, light sleep is about 50% of our total sleep time. Then we fall into stages 3 and 4, which are deep sleep. And in an ideal situation, the combined total of stages 3 and 4 is about 25% of our sleep time. And it's what we call slow wave sleep. And during slow wave sleep is when we consolidate what's called declarative memory. So if I learn something new today, like all of you who are listening to me right now, hopefully you're going to learn at least a few new things. That's declarative memory. That's like book learning. Those kind of abstract concepts, that's what you're going to consolidate during deep sleep. So if tonight you get a really good sleep, you're much more likely to remember the stuff that you're hearing right now during this presentation. Then what happens is you fly up from these very, very slow brain waves, delta. Deep sleep is also called delta, and they're the very slowest brain waves. You fly up into REM, which is a very different kind of sleep. And as the night progresses, you'll see that the deep sleep bars get shorter. So you get most of your deep sleep in the first 3 to 4 hours, the first half of the night. And then you get barely any deep sleep towards the end of the night, but the REM bars get wider. So you get about also 25% of your total sleep time should be REM. REM stands for rapid eye movement, and that's when you're dreaming. So, fun fact, when you're dreaming, your body is paralyzed because otherwise, if you were dreaming about running away from the bad guy, you would start running, right? So the only thing that protects us from that is for our body to be paralyzed. Sometimes that goes awry. So there's some people who get paralysis when they're falling asleep or waking up from sleep, and it's quite scary. So just be aware, it's like a normal variant. It's usually not a big problem, and it usually only lasts a couple seconds or a minute. The only time when it becomes problematic is people who have narcolepsy. So narcolepsy is a disease where you can't stay awake during the day and you involuntarily fall asleep in like almost any situation. And often people who are falling asleep during the day with narcolepsy have this sleep paralysis. So that's, I went a little astray.
Oh, I've
as
had that.
I often do.
It's scary if you don't know what's going on.
Yeah,
If you
that's kind of why I
up, you're
mentioned it,
awake,
right?
but you can't move your body.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody else gets that, but yeah, yeah.
So the other thing that's really important to know about sleep, again, maybe to put your mind at ease a little bit, is that the average person gets less and less sleep as they age. I don't know whether we know why that's the case, but it definitely is the case. So if you think of a newborn baby, they're sleeping almost all the time. They've got it up here at about 18 hours. Believe it or not, children and adolescents need 9 to 10 hours of sleep a night. Now, I'm sure any of you listening who have adolescents at home, they don't get 9 to 10 hours of sleep. So in our society, most adolescents are sleep deprived chronically. It's a big problem. And the solution to the problem, the other thing that happens during adolescence is not only do you still need just as much sleep as you had when you were a child, and we think the reason for that is because you're growing, right? Your body needs to do a lot of growth and repair at night to keep up with the rapid growth. So not only do you need a lot of sleep, but naturally the sleep-wake cycle tends to get moved later. And therefore, starting high school at like 7:30, 8 a.m. is a disaster for adolescents in terms of sleep. So Matthew Walker is actually doing public advocacy work with governments all over the world, trying to get them to move high school start times later. Like he says 9 or 10 o'clock would be much more ideal and would result in much better health. Then as we move into adulthood, the average, we'll say the ideal sleep time goes to about 8 hours, somewhere between 7 and 9. And on this chart, they have for the average older individual about 5 hours. So if you're listening to this and you're becoming elderly like myself, and you're not getting 8 hours anymore, it might be okay, right? So again, this is just to put your mind at ease. There's these natural patterns, and not all of us can get that perfect 8 hours that people talk about. Now, many of you may use a sleep tracker. I use an Oura Ring. I would say it's pretty accurate for total sleep time. It's pretty accurate for sleep efficiency. That's the amount of time that you're in bed divided, the amount of time that you're actually asleep divided by the amount of time you're in bed. And I'm going to come back to this a bit later. What I've been told, though, is most sleep trackers are not that accurate in the stages of sleep. So they all claim to be able to tell you, are you in a deep sleep, a light sleep, or a REM sleep? But apparently, and I've heard it from more than one source, so it's including in the Sleep Summit, someone talked about that. So I wouldn't get, again, too distressed if the numbers you're getting on your sleep tracker for the sleep stages are not what you'd like them to be. But you do want to look at your total sleep time and see if you can improve it, if it's below 7 hours. So if you're using a tracker, there's 2 additional things that might be helpful to know about. One is heart rate. Now, most sleep trackers in the morning will give you a readout for the night before, and it should look something like this. So this is heart rate. Believe it or not, when you're asleep, your heart rate should be quite low. So where it says here 44, you might think, oh my goodness, that's so low, because we have in our mind that an average healthy heart rate is 60 to 72 beats per minute. But that's during the day when we're moving and talking and thinking. When we're asleep, the heart rate is actually should be lower because you're in a state of rest. It should also have this little subtle U shape where it hits the bottom somewhere between 3 and 4 a.m. in the middle of the night, and then starts coming back up as the body secretes cortisol to get you ready for the day. So if you look at your nighttime heart rate and it's not a U shape, that means maybe something's going on that's interfering with your getting in a full restful state. And if your heart rate is much above 50, again, it means that maybe doing things to calm your nervous system might be helpful. So it's just a hint about where you could put your energy. The other rating that most newer heart rate wearable trackers have is heart rate variability. So this should have an inverse U. It should be more like up, like an N shape, let's say. So in the middle of the night, your heart rate variability should be the highest. A high heart rate variability means you're in a very calm state, and the 2 branches of your autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, are well synced with each other. And that's what you want at night. You want your heart rate variability to be high. High is good. And it should be like the exact inverse of your heart rate. So in general, if you just think about it, if you're on adrenaline because something stressful just happened, it's going to push your heart rate up. And you may not be aware of this, but it'll push your heart rate variability down. You want the opposite of that to happen during sleep. So looking at these 2 numbers can also give you a good idea of the state your body is in overnight. I think these are actually from my phone. I think this is from my Oura Ring. If you look, so a lot of people ask, well, what's a good heart rate variability number? So I've looked it up. It's a moving target, right? It's like heart rate and blood pressure. It's always changing. But I would say the average, you want to be above 60. So 60 and above is a healthy range. Probably above 80 is like really, really fit and healthy. 40 to 60, maybe you've got some mild health problems or some stress going on. I had patients in my practice who would come in with a heart rate variability of like 20 or 10 or 5, right? They were quite severely ill. Okay, so I'm going to describe a little bit what actually is going on in the body when we sleep, the chemistry of sleep. So sleep is a balance between 3 different hormones/chemicals in our body. It's like an orchestra. These 3 players have to play together for sleep to occur. The first thing we need is an increase in something called adenosine. Now, adenosine is a nucleotide. It does a lot of things. It makes up our DNA and RNA. It's the A in DNA and RNA. It's also a signaling molecule, really, really important in illness and healing. That's like a talk for a different day. But in terms of sleep, it's the molecule that is our sleep drive. So if you think about yourself, you wake up in the morning and hopefully you feel relatively refreshed. It's because you just slept and your adenosine level is low. So it's at its lowest when you first wake up. As the day goes on, your adenosine slowly increases as you get more tired/sleepy. And when you've been awake for about 16 hours or more, in a full health situation, the adenosine will be high enough that it will make you sleepy enough to fall asleep with ease. Coffee or caffeine is an adenosine blocker, right? So your adenosine's going up in the day, you have a coffee, it temporarily blocks the effects of adenosine. It doesn't make it go away, it just blocks the effects. So coffee, just had a conversation with someone today about coffee. I don't think coffee is good or bad. Like someone was asking me, is it okay to drink caffeinated tea or coffee? It's totally okay unless you're someone who's really sensitive to coffee and you drink it at noon and it's still in your system at, midnight, then it's probably not going to be a good choice for you. The liver enzymes that metabolize coffee, we have kind of the normal variant of the enzyme. And then there's some people who are slow metabolizers, meaning literally you could have one coffee first thing in the morning and it's still in your system at bedtime. Those people already know who they are because they've usually made a decision that it's not worth it to drink coffee. It's not that it's bad for you. It's just that it's still in their system. It's blocking adenosine and now you can't sleep. Then there's other people who are fast metabolizers, and they're the ones who can drink a coffee with their dessert at 8 p.m. and still fall asleep with no problem. So that's adenosine. You need it to be high. Now, the other thing that gets in the way of adenosine is a nap. According to my sleep behaviorist, who I'm now meeting with, she said a short nap is okay, especially if you got a really crappy sleep and you're very fatigued or sleepy, but probably limit it to about half an hour. Otherwise, your adenosine is going to go down and it won't have recovered in time by bedtime. You want to have your cortisol or your stress hormone be low. So remember I showed you that heart rate U. As soon as you feel stress and your cortisol goes up, it pushes your heart rate up. So in order to have that nice U shape of heart rate in the night, you have to have a low cortisol level. That's what's supposed to happen, is that it dips in the night until about or in the morning where it starts coming up again because it knows the sun is about to rise and it's preparing you for the day. So if your heart rate is high, it could be a sign that your cortisol or adrenaline are high. And that's why I said paying special attention to the things I'm going to talk about later in terms of calming the nervous system might be beneficial. Then the third leg of this stool is melatonin. As many of you know, melatonin is a naturally occurring hormone that we start producing at dusk. So as soon as the sun goes down and it's dark out, in a natural scenario, say you're camping for the weekend and there's not a lot of light around, your body's going to start producing melatonin, and it will keep pumping it out until it's high enough to help out the adenosine and the low cortisol and help you naturally fall asleep. So that's what happened to our Paleolithic ancestors who got up with the sun and went to bed at dusk, or about they think maybe an hour or two after dusk. So what happened to us? It really all started with technology. First, we had the light bulb. Maybe first we had candles, although apparently the amount of light candles produce is not strong enough to significantly impair melatonin. So it's really when we started getting kerosene lanterns and then the electric light bulb. In 70 years since World War II, when most people now have electricity, the average person is sleeping 20 to 25% less. I mean, that's dramatic. So it's gone from 7.9 hours on average in 1942 to 6.5 today. There's also some attitudes around sleep, right? It's not only the light bulb, and of course, other technology, but it's also that we have this work ethic, many of us, that doing is better and sleeping is a waste of time. So there's a saying, I'll sleep when I'm dead. And unfortunately, that happened. So apparently, two of the famous people who had that attitude were Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. And you may know both of them died of dementia, right? So there is some evidence, I'm going to talk about it in an upcoming slide, that sleep, getting enough sleep, is protective against dementia. So people brag about getting by on less, but it is not advised. So all of the sleep experts say, even if you think you don't need that much, 7 hours is kind of the dividing line in most studies between enough for the good health effects versus not. Okay, so I'm not going to belabor this too much, but there are a bunch of health effects, and I'm going to talk about some of the most important. So the first one is on cognition. So as I've mentioned, memory is consolidated. The declarative memory, the book learning, is consolidated during deep sleep, and what we call procedural memory, so learning how to do stuff like drawing, riding a bike, a sport, a new skill, a new craft, anything that you kind of learn by doing, that's consolidated during REM. So deep and REM, we need everything. And one of the things I heard that was really impactful is that sleep isn't just the absence of awareness. It's not just that we're unconscious. There's actually these incredibly complex physiological processes that are going on during sleep that no medication can replicate. So getting enough sleep, by which they mean 7 hours, decreases the risk of Alzheimer's by 50%. The other thing that's really impacted by sleep, either positive or negative, is metabolism. So there's this thing called metabolic syndrome, and this is the diagram that describes it. It means visceral obesity. That means fat on the inside around the organs, not necessarily the fat you can see on the outside. High blood sugar, which in its worst case goes to diabetes, hypertension, triglycerides, too much bad fat, and leads to a shift from burning fat to burning carbohydrate and even losing less fat when you're dieting. Just noticing the time, and I'm going to actually run through these a little bit faster. So people that sleep less are more likely to develop diabetes. And when they eat a meal, their insulin spikes more than a person who wasn't sleep deprived who ate the exact same meal. Believe it or not, in both men and women, getting 5 to 6 hours a night are associated with infertility. The World Health Organization lists shift work as a possible carcinogen. So that means not getting enough sleep and not getting regular sleep increases the risk of 3 of the top 4 cancers: bowel, prostate, and breast. And if you already have cancer, not getting enough sleep increases your risk of recurrence. We think this acts because DNA can't repair itself as well when we're not sleeping, and the immune system, which is supposed to be finding and killing cancer cells, is less effective. I'm going to skip over this one pretty fast just to say that sleep changes our genetic expression, and sleep changes it in positive ways. It decreases inflammation and it increases repair. Of course, sleep deprivation can lead to other obvious things like car accidents because your reflexes are slowed, and decreased performance. And when you sleep less, you're less motivated. So people who sleep less tend to exercise less. So then it becomes a little bit of a vicious cycle. So the good news is that although we can't make up for lost time, it's never too late to start. So I have a little mantra in my practice: don't delay, start today. So when you learn of something you can do to improve your health, it's always better to start sooner than later. So a quick word about sleeping pills. They put you to sleep, meaning you're not conscious, but they don't replicate the complicated physiology that allows us to have these, good memory and repair of the brain and getting rid of garbage. So when we're in deep sleep, that's the time that we have this special system in our brain called the glymphatic system that disposes of metabolic garbage. So all of these are things that medications unfortunately can't replicate. So most people say they should be used only short term and or only after other options have been exhausted. However, working in the field I've been in for the last 25 years, working with people with horrible, horrible sleep problems due to myalgic encephalomyelitis and fibromyalgia, I just have to say that sometimes they are justified. Okay, so now I'm going to go into what to do. There's 4 pillars of sleep. You want it to be consistent. I'm not going to go too much into that because I talked about that at length in the circadian rhythm talk. You want it to be continuous. You want it to be sufficient, that magic 7 hours. And you want it to be good quality, meaning enough of the deep and the REM sleep. So the most researched and most effective strategies are part of something called cognitive behavior therapy for insomnia. There's 4 main strategies that I'm going to share with you. The first one is that we want to train our brain that when it's bedtime and when we get into bed, that's the time for sleep. The only way we can do that is by consistently every single night pairing our bed with sleep. So what this means is you don't want to be in bed and not be asleep, and you don't want to be asleep in the night and not in bed. You got to teach your brain that bed and sleep go together. This means that if you're not sleepy, don't go to bed. So it's counterproductive to go to bed and lie awake. This also means, so say you went to bed when you were sleepy, you fell asleep, but now you woke up in the middle of the night and you can't get back to sleep. Once it becomes obvious to you that you're not sleepy enough to get back to sleep, the recommendation is to get out of bed and to do something boring and relaxing. So nothing that's going to get you really worked up or stimulated. So don't watch a scary movie. Don't read a murder mystery. There's things like stories that don't have any point that you can listen to on the internet that just kind of go on, and you think something's happening, but it never really leads to anything. So you want to use bed only for sleep and possibly for intimate relations, but not for other activities. The second strategy, and this is mostly to decrease the number of wakenings and to increase the quality. So even though the goal is to get this magic 7 hours, nevertheless, it's better to have quality sleep than quantity. So just being asleep for 10 hours, as anybody with ME will know, doesn't mean you're getting a quality sleep. If you're someone who's waking up quite a bit and having a hard time getting back to sleep, and you would know this by measuring your sleep efficiency that I mentioned before. So the amount of time you're actually asleep, say 6 hours, divided by the amount of time you're actually in bed, say 8 hours, that will give you a percentage. That number is less than 85. If your number is less than 85, then this strategy of sleep restriction is worth trying. And basically what you do is you decrease the amount of time you're in bed by going to sleep later and waking up earlier with an alarm to make sure you wake up at the same time or no later than the same time every day. You make that time equal to a minimum of 5.5 hours. So even if you're not sleeping that much, it's better to be in bed resting for 5.5 hours than not. You get something out of that. So minimum of 5.5 hours, a time equal to the amount of time you're actually sleeping. So say in the case I just mentioned, 6 hours plus 30 minutes. So in that case, you would allow yourself 6.5 hours in bed. So that might mean you would go to bed at midnight. You would set your alarm for 6 a.m. And no matter what happens in the night, you would wake up with that alarm and get out of bed. This will increase your sleep drive because the first several nights you do that, you're going to be very sleepy. You didn't get enough sleep and your adenosine level is going to be high. And now the next night, when it comes time for that midnight bedtime, you're going to fall asleep more easily, and so on. Usually it takes 1 to 2 weeks for this to make a significant difference in sleep quality. Now, my big caution here is if you're hypersomniac, like I described I was earlier, you're already sleeping more than 9 hours, or your sleep efficiency is greater than 85%. Do not do this. You don't need it, right? If you're sleeping more than 9 hours, you need it. And if your sleep efficiency is 85%, you're doing awesome and you don't need to change a thing.
Can I ask
Now,
a question there?
Oh, go
Can
ahead.
I interrupt you for a while?
Yes.
I think this might be relevant to a lot of people.
Sure.
Like Cheryl mentioned, like when you have a lot of pain and you spend a lot of time in bed during the day,
Yes.
what would you recommend those people do around
Not do that.
habits of?
So I would
Yeah.
recommend that you don't spend time in bed at all during the day. For myself, sometimes because I've got this new sleep issue going on, I take a nap like I took one today. I do something a little bit unusual, but I never ever nap in bed. So I'm
Oh,
never in my bedroom during the day. So what I do, and this works for some people, I actually lie on my living room floor. I have a very comfy carpet with padding underneath, so it's quite comfortable, but it's not too comfortable, right? Because I don't want to sleep for too long. I put my legs up on my sofa. So I'm lying on the floor with my legs up, and for it increases vagal nerve tone because you're getting blood returning to your heart from your lower body. And for me, it's
right.
super relaxing and I fall asleep pretty quickly.
That's a good yoga pose. Yeah,
yeah,
legs up
someone
the
taught it
wall.
to me
Yeah.
and it works
Mhm.
really for me. Now it's not going to
Okay.
work for everyone. Someone with a lot of pain, that's not going to be comfortable enough. But I would
Yeah,
say
but they could go in a lazy boy or something
exactly.
outside of their bedroom, make themselves comfortable somewhere else.
Yeah. But you really want to
Yeah.
train. That's a great question. You really want to train your brain that bed is for sleep, not for rest. Because otherwise you'll just
Okay.
rest all night. And that's not what you
Yeah, that
want.
makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. That's a really important question. So I've already hinted that if you have a tracker and you notice that your heart rate overnight is not in a U, it's flat or even in an N shape, then you know that calming might be more important for you than these other strategies I've already mentioned, right? So part of the trick is to try to individualize what works for you. So if you're someone who's going to bed and lying in bed, tossing and turning, then the first strategy is for you. If you're someone who's waking up a lot, the second strategy is for you. If you're someone who has a high heart rate overnight and a low heart rate variability, then this one is for you. And it's basically doing whatever you can to clear your mind of worry and to relax your body. Because of course, the mind and the body are connected. So some tricks include make time for constructive worry during the day. So a lot of us have worries, like there's stuff we've got to solve. There's life circumstances. Don't wait until nighttime to start thinking about it. Save some time specifically for that purpose of problem solving during the day. Do pleasurable, relaxing activities before bed, things that will not get you too wound up. If it works for you and it doesn't for everybody, try mindfulness meditation. Think there's other strategies like progressive muscle relaxation and paced breathing. And an example of paced breathing, basically it's anything where the exhale is longer than the inhale. So there's many different forms. Everyone has their favorite, but basically this one, you breathe in for 4, you hold for 7, you breathe out for 8. So that combination of 7 and 8 is 15. That's way longer than the 4. Another one is box breathing, where you breathe in for, say, a count of 4 or 5, hold it for 4 or 5, breathe out for that same amount, and then hold it. That's a box breathing because it has 4 steps. There's something called Heart Math, which is an extremely helpful tool. It's created and sold by a nonprofit organization called the Heart Math Institute. You can look it up online. I believe it costs about $140 US. And you get a little clip that you put on your ear. It plugs in it's either Bluetooth to your phone or an actual cable to your laptop. And it's measuring your heart rate variability in real time. And it's coaching you by giving you little games how to increase your heart rate variability, which means you're calming your nervous system. The last step here, and this is helpful for some people and not for others, is some people get worked up about sleep itself, right? They're not worried about their lives. They're worried that they're not sleeping. And often those people have, we'll say, fixed beliefs like, I have to get 8 hours. And if they see the clock ticking, which of course is a sleep strategy, don't have a clock in your bedroom, but say you're getting more and more worked up as the night goes on, of course, now you're not going to be able to sleep because you've just raised your adrenaline. If I wake in the night, it will have a negative effect. So of course, if you wake 17 times in the night consistently, it will have a negative effect. But in any given moment, it's not critical whether you're asleep or awake. This is kind of related to the question that Madeline asked. If I spend more time in bed, even when I'm not sleeping, I will feel better. The corollary of that, if I spend more time resting during the day in bed, I will sleep better, but actually both are counterproductive. And the last one is, I can't do anything about this because it's a chemical imbalance similar to what people worry about with depression. Not true. These strategies work. Like, I've benefited a lot from these strategies. I just have one final step that I'm struggling with. But if I wasn't doing these things every night, my sleep would be a disaster. Napping is
So
okay.
Ellie, there's
Mhm.
a really quick question
Yeah.
around like yoga nidra, doing breath work,
Yeah.
calming things. Do you do them in bed or in a different
I
place?
think it's okay to do them in bed if they're effective. So if you know that you do a breath exercise in 10, 15 minutes, you're going to be asleep, that's okay. But if you
Okay.
know that it's going to be like an hour-long process, better to get out of bed and do it. So
Okay,
it's all
great.
about, overall, you want to be in bed and asleep 85% of the time. And so if
Mhm.
you're in bed doing extensive exercises that are going to cause that 85 to start dropping, then it's better to get out of bed.
Got it. Okay.
So again, with the
That was for
naps,
Judy.
a short nap is okay. And there's something that Dr. Andrew Huberman, most of you know I'm a bit of a fan of his, so he's got something called the Huberman Lab podcast. And he talks about something called non-sleep deep rest. So apparently this is a thing, like I'm hearing other people on board with this as well. Say you're very tired or sleepy during the day and you need a recharge, and maybe you're someone who can't easily fall asleep for a short nap. Doing yoga nidra, meditation, or breath work where you're not going to fall asleep, but you've also kind of turned your mind off and you're calming your nervous system. There's actually research that shows this can enhance learning and memory. Regular physical activity in most people is beneficial. Of course, in people with myalgic encephalomyelitis and severe post-exertional malaise, this has to be undertaken with caution. But for most people, even people with chronic pain, some degree of exercise is helpful. I did a joint webinar last week with Yoni Witten. He's a kinesiologist and chiropractor. And that webinar is now posted on my free video page. So if you go to my website, there's tabs across the top. One is called free resources. And one of the tabs under that is called educational videos. And we just posted it earlier today. So he goes on at some length about the research, which I wasn't totally aware of, that movement actually decreases nociception. You guys probably all know this because you're in the chronic pain space. And so he's saying, obviously you have to go about it sensibly and set yourself up for success, but movement will help pain. Very quick word on jet lag, and then we're done. Basically, when you're traveling east, prepare yourself for the new time zone. So get up earlier in preparation, take some melatonin earlier to help give your mind that message that you're going into a time zone where everything's going to happen sooner. Eat sooner, like all of your daily routines, do them a bit earlier to prepare yourself. So to sum up, unfortunately, just a consequence of our society, most people don't get enough sleep. The number one cause is lifestyle. It's not that we've suddenly become biologically unable to sleep. It's because of how we're living our lives. That's great news because it means we can fix it to a large degree by stabilizing circadian rhythm. So I gave a whole talk on that in January, which should be on the NELM's website. Decreasing fight or flight, because that will veto sleep. It will totally block sleep. And then basically training your brain to do what you want it to do and when you want it to do it. Oh, okay. I just wrote that right before the talk, and I obviously have a typo there. So you can get a handout on sleep, and this is the link. So in this handout, there's information on sleep and also on circadian rhythm. And maybe if I've been told I have permission to just mention something new that I'm offering.
Yeah, of
I
course.
have just launched a new membership called Live with Dr. Stein. So since I'm not working anymore seeing patients, there is a big demand to access, some of the knowledge that I've accumulated over the past 35 years. So this is a membership where if you join, you can join me live for sessions like this, right? Where I'll be presenting information and then there will be live Q&A. It's every other Thursday. The next one is on Thursday, March 14th. And the topics are going to be things of particular interest to people with chronic complex diseases. So myalgic encephalomyelitis, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, chronic pain, and long COVID. That's my base. So all the topics are going to be of direct relevance to people with those conditions. I'm also including some information on chronic disease in general, because I've been studying and learning that at a biological level, actually diseases have more in common than they have different. And even the biology of aging has a lot in common with chronic disease. And the reason I'm bringing those other fields in are because there's a ton of research out there that we can benefit from. So on my website, I now have a new little link called Store, and the live is under the live courses section. And if you join the membership, you get to attend free a new webinar series I just started on Friday, and it's called the Expert Speaker Series. So once a month, I'm engaging an expert again in some field of direct relevance to this community. So Professor Peter Rowe from Johns Hopkins talked on Friday about orthostatic intolerance. For those of you who don't know, it's basically when you have low or unstable blood pressure. It's very common in people with chronic pain. It's associated with hypermobility. And he gave like an outstanding talk packed with information, which I hope to have up on my website by tomorrow, where there's a few more steps involved than what we thought. And people can also join those webinars just as a one-off. So I have a new tab at the top of my page called Upcoming Events. And that's where I should have had tonight's event listed, so that anything I'm doing, whether it's free or paid, hopefully will get our duckies together and it'll all show up on that website.
That's great.
On that link, on that page.
I don't know why it's not letting me paste links. So what I can do is I can send, I don't, sometimes it does that. I can
Okay, so
send
I
links
just
out
put in the
after.
chat the link
great.
to the free handout.
I think you just sent it to me.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kate, let me try again. Oh, you're right, I'm blocked. Oh, no, now it's letting me. Everyone? Okay, I think that worked.
Yeah.
So as usual, I spoke in a little bit more depth than I anticipated, but I'm happy to take questions. And maybe Madeline has been, I know she's been watching for them.
Yeah, I just want to jump to, I just want to look at Andrew's question. Best practice if I don't sleep, so practice yoga nidra. So Andrew, I'm hoping that your question, I know it came in at the beginning. You can let me know if that was answered through Ellie's talk or not, because I think it may have been answered.
So you can definitely do it in bed if it's going to be brief, but if it's going to take you a long time, better to get up.
Right. Okay. Sorry. Now, okay. Does sleeping on an electric bed affect the sleep? Should the bed be unplugged at night after the right position is found? I have.
So
do you know the answer to that?
Oh, I totally do. Yes, electric beds are very problematic. So on my free videos, I've got a ton of free resources on my website. Oh no, sorry, that's not. There's a webinar. So there's a EMF specialist. whose name I'm blanking on, Mitch Marchand. So he's in Calgary. He's a certified building biologist, and he gave it's a paid webinar, so $20, but it's very packed with information. And he goes through all of the health effects of being in close proximity to electromagnetic frequency. And you definitely don't want it in your bed. So the same goes with heating pads. And I know for people with chronic pain, heating pads are like your most favorite possession. But what I would say is use the heated bean bags rather than an electric device, because having electricity on your body, a large amount of time is, I won't say for sure, but I will say it's potentially harmful for health. So myself, I go to extremes. I actually have a little clicker and I turn off all the electricity to my bedroom at night. So I have nothing electric. My clock is off, everything. My phone is off. My Wi-Fi is off.
Out of the room too, like phones.
It's turned off in my entire
anything.
house.
Yeah.
Like I literally turn off the Wi-Fi at night because I just want to give my nervous system the best possible chance to be in that deep sleep state.
Right. Yeah, I love my rice bag that I heat in the microwave every night. Okay, hopefully I'm getting this. I'm on sleeping
Glad you're doing
medication
this because they're pouring in. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm on sleeping medication. See, my best sleep is between 5 and 9 a.m. after the medication has stopped working. Any
Interesting.
suggestions?
So I wonder if you need them.
That's a good question.
No? That's a really good point. So there's this additional thing about sleep that I didn't mention. We all have, like all of our bodies have the time when we're most likely to get into our best quality sleep. And we're all different, right? So some people are early birds, some people are night owls. So early birds go to bed at 9, get their best sleep between like 9 and midnight, and then maybe don't have such a good sleep and end up waking up at 4 a.m. They're called farmers or, people often in that lifestyle. Then other people who are night owls, if you put them to bed at 9, they'd be tossing and turning. It would be totally futile. I remember when I was ill, I got my best sleep between like 6 and 10 a.m. So I ran my entire medical practice, didn't start till noon, because what was the point? I wasn't going to be able to be like paying attention and with it anyway. Now that's totally changed, with age. Now I'm waking up at 7 every morning, even if I don't set my alarm. So we change with age, but I always tell people who are quite ill, look at what is the time when you get your best sleep and try to be in bed during that window. Like take advantage of the messages your body's telling you. Don't try to fight it.
And I would add to that, I know I've heard that if you're having any issues with sleep, go get a sleep study. They are so informative. Because
totally
sometimes people think they're not sleeping at all, and then they find out they had a good sleep or the opposite. It's really helpful, and it's free to go here in BC.
Well, it's not in Alberta. It's $1,200.
It's how much?
$1,200.
Oh, okay. Oh, geez, we've got 2 sleep clinics here that you could get into really quickly.
Wow.
Oh, you're kidding. Oh, yeah. So I really, really suggest that. I've got a good question from Stuart. I think a lot of people might have this too. I have problems staying up late and can't sleep. And for a lot of people, that's due to pain. Then I fall asleep in a chair and then I go to bed and then I wake up tired. What can I do to not be so tired when I wake up?
So, of course, it's always more complicated, right? And every individual is different and no recommendation will be right for everyone. But in general, falling asleep in the chair is problematic, right? Because now you're teaching your brain that chair equals sleep, bed equals poor quality sleep, tossing and turning. So I would say this is really tough. If you're very sleepy, then in the evening, before it's your ideal bedtime, you got to do stuff maybe not in your chair. You got to do stuff that's going to keep you awake. It's very hard. It's like white knuckling sometimes.
Mhm.
The other
Mhm.
thing you can do is that sleep restriction. So say you fall asleep in your chair at midnight, because this person said they're falling asleep kind of on the later side. You wake up at 4 and now you're kind of tossing and turning in and out of sleep. Maybe you get up at 8 or 9 and you're kind of dragging. That sleep restriction might help, where you start setting your alarm. Say you're waking up. So a lot of people have inconsistent sleep times when they have pain because they never know if it's going to be a good night or a bad night. And they wake up at varied times, like say between 9 and 12. Okay, remember, I'm coming from a practice where everybody had horrible sleep and often woke up late. Then I say to people, set your alarm for 11, right? So slowly, 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 maybe 15 minutes a week, because you've probably had this sleep problem for decades. So if it takes you a few months to fix, it's no big deal. Work your
Worth
alarm
it.
back to an earlier and earlier time. As that happens, the first few days that you set your alarm to an earlier time and you force yourself to get up no matter what, you're going to be sleepy. Your adenosine going to be higher. That means that night you're probably going to fall asleep a little bit earlier than usual. So you're just slowly shifting your sleep-wake cycle earlier. The reason people might want to do that, because I've just said, sleep whenever is good for your body. But unfortunately, the rest of the world doesn't get up at noon. And so then what happens is if you're someone who gets up at noon and now you have a doctor's appointment at 9 a.m., you're going to be a total mess. So for most people, trying to shift it closer to the kind of normal societal time is going to be more functional. But take your time. Don't go, okay,
Yeah.
starting today, I'm getting up at 7. I mean, it won't work. You'll be a mess.
Yeah.
And you'll fall
Just
asleep.
slowly shifting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It's like sleep training for babies all over again.
We are
I've had
babies,
to do this
really.
myself. Yeah. Okay, so I think we've got time for one more question.
Okay.
So Madeline says I have pain when I lie down, and it's so bad sometimes. I think people can relate to this, that I have to
Yeah.
get out of bed, and sometimes that is so painful I don't even want to move, but not moving is just as bad. Okay, I can relate to this. Do you have any suggestions? Sometimes the pain can take, I think she said 1 to 2 hours before I'm able to get to sleep. Yeah.
Right.
So moving is hard and the pain is hard.
So of course, this is very complicated. It depends a lot on the cause of the nature of the pain. So in the fibromyalgia field, we have a saying, treat the peripheral pain generators, meaning fibromyalgia, the kind of hurting all over body pain, is made worse if people have additional sources of pain like migraine, osteoarthritis, etc. So it's the same for sleep. So if pain is the main thing interfering with sleep, then you might want to put your energy into better managing the pain. And of course, I have a whole course for that. I have 2 whole courses for that on my website. One is all around self-management. So pacing, doing activity, but pacing it right. Having a diet that won't annoy your immune system. So a so-called anti-inflammatory diet, managing stress, all of these kind of things to help your pain. And then I have a whole course on using neuroplasticity for pain, and a whole lecture talk on that is on the Nellum's website from, almost a year ago. I think it was April of 23. So you can get a lot of free information on some of the strategies to try to manage the pain. I know from a medication point of view, and I don't know what you recommend at your clinic, but it's often like, if you're going to take pain medication, often before bed is the best time. If you're going to take it at some point during the day, take it before bed so that at least you can get some sleep, because good sleep will also help decrease pain. So you want to change that negative vicious cycle to a positive one, where you could get enough sleep to then maybe do a little bit of activity the next day to decrease the sensitivity of the nociceptors, to then have less pain, to then get better sleep. So it's always more than one thing that's going to help something as complicated as pain.
Right. But I like that, maybe shifting from the stress around sleep to what's happening throughout the day and using some
Right.
of the strategies that that you just talked about just now. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just so people know, we do have in April, we're talking about gut health. So we are going to be covering nutrition, and we have a gastroenterologist coming in to help us with that. So everything is just so related. Like it's like a mobile, one shifts and then the other one shifts, and but
Or
like
some
you say,
people
do
say
as
like a
many things.
whack-a-mole, right? You push this one down and this one pops up.
Right.
But the converse is true. The more of these you can kind of optimize, the less things pop up.
Yeah, and take as many as you can. And like if something's not working, like this, if it's too stressful to focus on sleep, I just really like that idea to spread your attention out to what else is happening. Yeah, so I think we have actually covered most questions. So
Wow, that's fabulous.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the
perfect.
opportunity.
Thanks, Ellie. It's been
And
a
go to the link,
fantastic.
get the free handout.
What an amazing talk. Thanks very much.
Yeah, you're welcome, Mark.
Yeah. You have a good evening.
Thanks so much.
Yep, thanks
So
a
much
lot.
good information, and I will send the link out
Right.
with the recording.
I'll say
Okay.
till we have you on again.
Well, I know a request is being put in, so I'll just say, Madeline, you asked for hormesis. So I'm finally at a point where I'm going to start working on that one.
Okay, I will look forward to that
future.
because I really like the idea of that topic. Yeah.
Oh,
And in the meantime, don't forget Ellie's membership group and the other webinars on the website, as well as she has some amazing online courses that I know some people here have taken and really benefited from. So thanks everyone for being here tonight. Enjoy the rest of your night, and thanks, Ellie. We'll see you again.
Okay, bye both. Bye everybody.
Okay. Bye. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.